I decided to go with a really high contrast in this piece, so you have to let me know what you think. Thanks for joining me today. This is Lisa with Ivy Lane Interiors, and the project today is this mid-century modern dresser. Now, it does have a laminate top, so I am going to go ahead and paint it out, but thankfully, all of the drawers are intact. There is no veneer damage, so I decided to be able to go ahead and just sand those to raw to see what I had to work with. So I'm going to start by taking off the hardware. I'm using QCS by Stripwell to strip all of the drawers. You just spray it on, wait 15 minutes, spray it on again. Sometimes I do go ahead and put plaster wrap down. I did not on these, but after the second 15 minutes is up, then I go ahead and start scraping and see how much of that finish I can get off. I'm just using a 5-in-1 tool. You can use a putty knife, and you just go in there and scrape as much of it as you can off. Now, according to the Stripwell website, you also can come in with their spray and a medium grit of steel wool. So I'm using a 00. I know some people use the green Scotch-Rite pads to also kind of get it off. Now for the top, I've already sanded it, but I like to go in with a liquid sandpaper just for a final clean before I actually prime it. I don't like to get paint all on the insides of it, so I do like to come back with painter's tape and just try to carefully mask off any areas that I don't want to get paint on. I'm using Ben Shellac primer. Because it is shellac based, it's really difficult to clean up. So as you can see, I just put it on a paper plate, and I'm just using a disposable roller, and I just roll it on, and then honestly I just throw it all away after I'm done because it's such a mess. I don't even try to clean out my brushes. I will go ahead and wrap them in some press and seal or some kind of a plastic wrap for the second coat, but after the second coat I just throw it away. So for the drawers, after I've done stripping them, I'm going to go through the sanding process. I usually start with either 120 or I'll go down to 80 if I still have some areas that I just didn't get the finish off on the stripping. And then I just go through all the grits. So I'm going to start with, like I said, 120, then I'll go up to 150, then I'll go up to 180. And I usually stop about 180 because then on this one I'm going to just do some Danish oil. So whatever product you're using, it usually has the instructions on it how far up you're supposed to sand to. Some products you sand up to 220, other ones 180. So it just depends on the product that you're going to be using. So here's the before the sand and after the sand. You can see it came off really well. So now I'm going to go ahead and apply my paint. I'm rolling today. Sometimes I spray and sometimes I roll. So this is Melange Paints in the color Paperie. It's a really pretty off-white with some champagne undertones. So the Melange paint goes on really well. It self-levels and it has really good coverage. For the rollers, I'm using Sherwin-Williams Contractor brand. I like to use a really the smallest nap I can find. So if I can find a 1/4 or 3/8 microfiber, those seem to work the best for me. My favorite rollers are the Stelmeister rollers that Fusion recommends, but I like Purdy also, as long as I can get a really thin nap, and microfiber seems to be the best for me. There was a little area that I noticed on the top when I was doing the coat that I didn't catch. So I decided just to pull back the paint and I'm going to sand a little bit and then I'm going to roller over it. So I like to fix things right away. So if I see some type of an area, a drip or something like that, I try to catch it before that paint dries. Problem is if you don't catch it, then you have to sand it down and then you kind of risk sanding down into your primer and then having to build back up from your primer to your paint. And so then you kind of have an uneven surface. So I really try to catch these things right away, especially on that first coat of paint. You see here, I'm just doing some really long strokes. And so once you've got it, then you go do some long strokes and then really just try to walk away. For the detail areas, I do like to use my zebra brush. I believe this is the angled one, probably the 2.5 inch. And I just go in and I've already had everything taped, so it just makes it really easy to go in and get all the little detailed areas. So for the drawers, I decided to do Danish Oil. This is a really easy finish to use. There's no stain. It's just bringing out the beautiful natural color of the wood. And so this is walnut, and I use dark walnut and the Watco Danish Oil. You literally just put it on, let it soak in, and then come back with a rag and just wipe off any extra excess that might be on the surface. I didn't want the color to go any darker, so I decided to do one coat in the dark walnut, and then I let it dry overnight, and then I came back the next day and did a coat in the clear Danish Oil, and then let that dry, and then I went and did one more coat. So the more coats you do of the Danish Oil, you're just building up that finish, and since they're drawers, that is plenty of coats. If I was doing a tabletop, I think you would need at least 4 to 5 coats. Honestly, once you get past about 4 coats, then you really start to see some shine on your Danish oil. You can see I'm just using a microfiber rag and I'm just coming back and I am wiping it down. So in 2 of the drawers, I had to do some wood repair, and the wood glue was not allowing that Danish oil to penetrate. So I had to sand it all back down, and then I had to clean it really well with denatured alcohol to just get that wood glue off. And then when I came back, I was able to then go ahead and use the dark walnut Danish oil, and it went on beautifully. Here I'm just lining the drawers. I just put it in, use my putty knife and an X-Acto knife to trim it up. There is a curved edge at the front, and so I just trim it a little bit with my scissors, and that way it kind of eases into the curve, and then I can go ahead and use my X-Acto knife and trim it easily. So for the hardware, I had one hole from the pre-existing hardware. I decided to change them out to these. These are kind of like cool mid-century modern style, but I had to drill another hole. So I have this little jig that I used, and I'm really careful with my hardware because anytime I'm drilling holes, I know people say, "Oh, you're doing overkill." Well, I am. I'm very cautious. So I line up my holes, and then I make sure that everything is lined up with that jig. I measure my hardware, and then I find the center. And then I use that measurement to then adjust how far out from the center I'm going to adjust the jig. So since I have one hole, you can see I'm just going to put the screw in and I'm just going to hold it there. And then that allows me to be able to mark the other hole. So that's where I'm going to drill the hole for the other side. I like to check and I double check just to make sure that it's all going to fit, especially when I've got wood. I mean, if it's one thing if it was a painted surface, but since it's wood, it would be very difficult to fix that. So I just want to make sure I'm really accurate with my measurements. Once I'm satisfied that it is correct, then I'll go ahead and use my drill and I'm going to drill a hole in there for the hardware. On the other side of a couple of the drawers, there were knob holes, and so I just replaced those with a little bit updated knob. So let's take a look at the before. Again, it was a laminate top in pretty good shape. Thankfully, the drawers were. And here's the after. It's a high contrast white with a really dark walnut. That is all Danish oil. There is no stain. And I think those drawers turned out stunning. I love the updated hardware that kind of has that mid-century modern vibe with the simple modern knobs. I just love it. Tell me what you think.